Amen. That was awesome. We could have just kept doing that the rest of the day and I would have been fine. You don't have to hear from me all the time. That is good stuff. Good stuff. Glad you're here this morning. Hope your week has been great. If it hasn't been, good news is it's only bound to get better. You know, it's going to look up, I promise. I can promise that. Well, welcome again to Level 13. Welcome to week 3 of our new teaching series, Heart Attack. This is a 4-week series that we're working through where we're exposing enemies of our heart. Now, we're taking our cue from one of the wisest men who's ever lived, a guy by the name of Solomon. He was a king in ancient Israel. He wrote a book called Proverbs that the Jewish people, they put together, and it was part of the Jewish scriptures. It's part of our Old Testament. And in this text that he wrote, he said this. He said, above all else, guard your heart, for everything that you do flows from it. Above everything else, guard your heart, because all that you are, everything that you have, everything flows out of your heart. And so we want to be really good stewards of our hearts. And so over the last few weeks, we've been looking at some enemies, some parasites, some things that try and lodge themselves in our hearts and do damage that maybe we never even see coming. In fact, just like a clogged artery can lie dormant for weeks or months or years without showing any external effects, these parasites, they may not even be noticeable in your life and in mine, and yet they're doing sometimes irreparable damage deep within. And so we want to call these things for what they are. So far, we've looked at 2 enemies of our hearts. We've looked at anger and we've looked at greed. And we said one thing about all 4 of these enemies is they have this thread that kind of weaves itself through all 4 of them, and it ties them all together. And that thread is simply this. Each one of them creates what we call a debt-to-debtor relationship. There's some sort of deficiency that's created. There's a debt to be paid, and there's someone who needs to pay up that debt. So far, we've looked at anger, and anger says, you owe me. You did something to me. You hurt me. Last week, we looked at greed, and basically greed is this idea that I deserve every good thing that comes my way, and I deserve every good thing that could come my way. It's for my consumption, and so greed says, I owe me. Well, this morning, we're going to take a look at something that is very closely related to greed. We're going to take a look at the enemy of jealousy. Now, when we hear jealousy, maybe we're already thinking, okay, I can chill on this one. That's not me. I don't have to worry about this one. It doesn't affect me. Just hang with me for just a little bit. Here's what jealousy says. Jealousy is the belief that I should also have or achieve whatever another person has or has achieved. I believe that whatever someone else has or has achieved, that I should have that too. It should come my way. And so it's easy to see how greed and jealousy would be related. And in fact, if we're not careful, we will misdiagnose jealousy as greed, thinking, hey, that should be mine. That shouldn't be yours. That should be mine. But that's really not where jealousy gets its power. I want to make a really kind of provocative statement. Jealousy doesn't really care that you have what you have. That's not the issue. Good for you. You have what you have. That's awesome. Jealousy says, I should have it too. It's okay for you to have it, but I should have that too. I should have the job that you have too. I should have the fat bank account that you have too. I should have the figure that you have too. I should have the pretty face that you have too. I should have the nice car and the family and the home. And I should have all of that stuff too. It's cool that you have it, but I should have it too. Anger says you owe me. Greed says I owe me. Jealousy's a little bit different. It says God owes me. And when we read that and we hear that, immediately we flinch. That's cringeworthy to say that. How can God owe me something? I want to push way back against that. But our issue isn't with the person who has the stuff. Our issue is with the God who had the ability to give us the same stuff that the other person has. And so our issue isn't with the person who has. It's an issue with God for making us a have-not. So what do all of those of us who fall into the have-not category? And that can be any number of things. It can be financial, it can be relational, it can be physical, it can all these different categories. So those of us who would fall into the category of a have-not, what do we do about it? Well, fortunately, James, the half-brother of Jesus, had some really interesting things to say describing jealousy and telling us how we can overcome jealous behavior. But he does it in kind of an odd way. He starts with a question. And it's that question that we're going to jump off of this morning to learn how to expose jealousy and how to rid our hearts from jealous behavior. Here's what he says. What causes fights and quarrels among you? What causes quarrels and fights among you? And if James were here this morning, we might want to press him a little bit further and say, okay, James, which one? Are you talking about the fight I had with my spouse earlier this week? Or the disagreement that I had with my business partner, the person at the office? Or are you talking about the argument I got in with my kids, on the way to church this morning? Which argument and which fight are you talking about, James? And I think if he were here, he would probably crack a little bit of a grin and say, yes, all of them. Every single argument, every single fight in James' mind can be reduced down to one common denominator. It can be reduced down to one specific idea, one specific concept, one thought, every single one. He continues, don't they come from your desires that battle within you? Don't they come from those desires that are deep within, that are just swirling and swarming and just moving around constantly? If James wanted to put it in 21st century language, he might say it like this. Whenever you have a disagreement or an argument with someone, all that stuff that's spinning around and swirling around inside of you has spilled out onto them. And all the stuff that's swirling and spinning around inside of them has spilled out onto you. And that's where the fight, that's where the argument, that's where the quarrels come from. And he continues. What causes fights and quarrels among you? Don't they come from your desires that battle within you? You desire, but you do not have. And there we get to it. Those things that are going on inside of us. It's desires, it's things, it's stuff that we don't have. It's stuff that we think we need, stuff that we think that we want, stuff we think that will make us happy. That's what's going on inside of us, and it's spilling out onto everyone else. And we've got these battles and these fights and these quarrels that are going on. And everything, it boils down to this. What causes fights and quarrels among you? Don't they come from your desires that battle within you? You desire, but you do not have. And then he continues. So you kill. You covet but cannot get what you want, so you quarrel and fight. And if we wanted to sum it all up really easily, what your desires do not have, you want. That's jealousy in a nutshell. What your desires do not have, you want. Now, he uses the word kill here. Chances are that's hyperbole. He's not physically talking about killing, but if we want to just stop and think about it for a minute, don't most murders happen because someone else has something that somebody else wants? Most murders happen that way. But that's not the word that I'm most interested in here. He uses the word covet. And if we wanted to look at that in its biblical definition, its biblical context, it means to strive after or hotly pursue. So the picture that he's painting here, James says, imagine someone who is trying to meet a need, and they're doing everything they can to go after it. They're pursuing it as hard and as hot and as passionately and as fervently as they can, and they just never can seem to satisfy that need, to meet that need. That's the concept. That's the idea of what's swirling around inside of us and what the cause of jealousy is. See, we could say it this way. Jealousy, it's an appetite that will never be satisfied. Now, I don't know if there are any foodies here this morning. And I wouldn't consider myself a foodie in the idea that, I know a lot about food. I'm just a foodie in the fact that I like food and I like good food. And there are moments that I have a craving for something. I know I'm probably the only one, but there are times, like, I don't even like pizza. I know it's a shocker, but 15 years in student ministry will do that to you. Pizza's just not my thing. But then all of a sudden, I'll get a craving, and I'll have to go to Blaze Pizza and get some pizza because it's just really good, and they didn't pay for that. So, Blaze, if you're listening, I accept all endorsement checks. Send it here. We'll make sure it's put to good use. But when I go to Blaze and I get a pizza and I eat it and I feel like that craving is satisfied, I don't ever say, okay, I'm done. I never have to eat again. Because my appetite is satisfied. It's finished. I never have to eat again. In fact, usually what happens is about 2 or 3 hours later, I'm ready for a snack. It's because our hunger never stops. It might be quelled for just a minute. It might slow down for just a minute and be like, oh, that hit the spot. That was great. But I get hungry again. Jealousy is the same way. Even when I get what I think that I want, what I think that I need, there's always something else out there. There's someone who has better or newer or more, someone who looks nicer, someone who no matter how much weight I happen to lose, someone who looks better than me, no matter how nice this new outfit makes me look, there's someone who looks better in it than I do. No matter how much the pay raise was with my new job, there's always somebody making more. It's never fully satisfied. It's an appetite that just continues to go over and over and over and over. C.S. Lewis, in his classic Mere Christianity, says it this way. He says, appetites grow through indulgence, not neglect. Gluttons think just as much about food as starving people. Wow. Wow. Appetites grow through indulgence. The more I feed that appetite, the greater that appetite for whatever it is going to be. More money, more power, more sex, more information. Whatever it is, that appetite's going to continue to grow and grow and grow. James continues. He says, you desire, but you don't have. So you kill, you covet, but can't get what you want. So you quarrel and fight. And then he introduces this shocker here. He says, you don't have because you don't ask God for it. You don't have what you're after because you're not asking God. And maybe, just maybe, we would respond if James were here this morning. We would say, James, that's where you're wrong. I can track with you up until this point because I have asked God. I've prayed about it. And typically our prayers about it go something along this line. God, would you change the heart of so-and-so so they will give me what I want? Right? That's how our prayers go if we're honest, because we're very self-serving and self-invested and self-interested people. We change their hearts, God, so that I can get the things that I think I need, the things that I think I want. Change the heart of the boss so he'll give me the pay raise and give me the promotion over someone else. God, change the heart of that person who has rejected me so that they'll want to spend time with me, and then I can reject them and let them know how it feels. God, would you, that's jealousy and being vengeful all at the same time. That's really just kind of a double whammy. But just saying what I'm saying. But that's not what James is talking about here. He's not saying, hey, you should pray about that and ask God to change the heart of somebody else. What he's saying is you and I need to approach God with all of the deepest desires of our heart, with everything that we've wanted, everything that we feel like should be coming our way. We go to God with that. We confess, we cry that out to God. And then we make this statement. God, I feel like you've shortchanged me. God, I feel like you could have done better by me. When I look around and I see how successful and I see how happy and I see how fit and thin that everyone else is, and I see, how much money they seem to have, and they're driving the nicest, newest cars, and they live in this beautiful home, and they've got this beautiful family, and they have all of these things. God, you could have done better by me. You could have done that for me. God, you shortchanged me. You kept me from having good things, God. And we get honest to God about what's in our heart. And that's a scary place to be. Because making that statement, we're almost like, who am I to say that? How can I make that statement to God? How can I say to God, you shortchanged me, you owe me? But that's what a jealous heart is screaming. A jealous heart is screaming, God, you didn't do right by me. You owe me. Fill in the blank. And when we make that statement, when we are honest to God and we open our hearts and we expose that demonic thing, that jealous, demonic, evil appetite that's there, and we say, God, this is what's in my heart and this is what I feel. This is really what's going on inside of me. We have no choice but to come face to face with the cross. We have no choice but to come face to face with the cross of Jesus Christ. When we have the audacity to stand and say, God, you have shortchanged me. You could have done better by me. We can't make that statement without looking at the cross that Jesus bled and died on. Because in Jesus, we didn't receive what we should have received. We didn't receive the punishment that we deserve. We received mercy and grace. In Jesus, we received what we didn't deserve. We deserved his wrath, and we instead received his love. I love the way Andy Stanley puts it in his book, It Came From Within. He writes, our disappointment with not getting what we want or believe we deserve pales in significance next to the fact that we have been given what we needed most. He continues, in the shadow of the cross, if it is clear God doesn't owe us anything, we owe him everything, including an apology. An apology for holding him to a debt he doesn't owe. A debt we held against him, but failed to recognize in the confusion and whirlwind of emotions that accompanies jealousy. It says, we owe him everything. So how can we stand and say, God, you owe me? When if it were not for his grace, where would I be? Clint Brown, years ago, worship pastor in Brownsville, Florida. Years ago, released a song that if not for grace, he said, where would I be? God only knows. And he goes on and he says, a hopeless case if not for grace. That's where we would be. We would be without hope. We would be on our way to a place called hell were it not for the grace of God. And so when we look at God and say, you owe me, we have to see the cross first. And when we see the cross, that changes everything. That shift and switch takes place in our hearts and says, my goodness, what have I been thinking? What have I been doing? What have I come to that I would say that God owes me? God doesn't owe me anything. I owe him everything. I owe him my very life. I owe him the breath that I breathe. I owe him everything. Jealousy says God owes me. The cure is looking at the cross. And once we look at the cross, then we move on to that next step of healing. We've identified what's there. We call out what's in our hearts. We say, this is here, and I need it to be gone. So how am I going to rid it? How am I going to get rid of it? We guard our hearts against jealousy by celebrating the successes of other people. We look at what's happened in somebody else's life, and instead of thinking, God, you could have done that in my life, we say, hey, that's awesome. I'm so happy for you. You got the promotion, and we both were going up for the promotion. Yeah, it might sting a little bit, but you're going to do great in that job. If somebody's wearing a new suit or a new dress or a new outfit and they look nice in it, don't think, man, I would look even better than that if God would have just helped me, be that size. Instead, tell the person, hey, you look phenomenal. You've been putting in the hard work. You look great. If someone is going on vacation for what seems like the 4th time in the year, and you're like, hey, I would even like 4 minutes to take a break. Instead of getting upset about that, you just say, hey, congratulations, man. That is so awesome. I'm glad that you're going to get away. It's going to be healthy and helpful for you. We celebrate openly the successes of others, and that rids our hearts of jealousy. Because the jealous heart looks inward, but celebration looks outward. A jealous heart is looking internally and saying, this is what I don't have. This is the deficiency. This is the lack. The celebratory heart says, I have everything that I need. And I'm going to honor and I'm going to celebrate and I'm going to shout for joy for others because they are created in the image of God and they've experienced blessings. And it's awesome. And I want to just enjoy that with them. We will celebrate the successes of others, and that rids our hearts of jealousy. And so this morning, there's 2 questions that I want to leave us with, to wrestle with, as we try to rid our hearts of jealousy. First, has jealousy been a part of my life that I either have not noticed or refuse to acknowledge? Has jealousy been a part of my life? Have I been guilty of being that person that says, God, you owe me. God, you owe me. You could have done better by me. You could have made me look this way. You could have given me this kind of genetic ability. You could have given me this type of an educational hand up. You could have done all these different things for me. God, you held out on me. Have I been that person? Has jealousy been a part of my life that I have failed to acknowledge or even recognize was there? And number 2, who have I secretly been jealous of that I need to start celebrating to break hold of the jealousy in my heart? Now, this question is really hard to be honest with. But here's a way that you can tell if you've been holding jealousy towards someone. When something good happens in their life, is your first response to be happy for them or to hope something bad happens? People really don't feel that way. Unfortunately, they do. And unfortunately, people who claim the name of Jesus have those feelings. I don't want them to like die or anything, but a broken leg or something would be okay. Or I don't want them to lose their job, but if they could be demoted to the lowest paying place in the company or the organization, that would be great. Or I don't want them to gain 300 pounds, but maybe 115 would be good. That would be great. We don't think that that's something that goes in the hearts and minds of people, and yet it does. And it's really hard for us to see it in ourselves because we want to give ourselves the benefit of the doubt. Oh, that's not me. I'm not jealous. There's not a jealous bone in my body. Think about the people that you don't like simply because they have something you don't have. Examine your sphere of influence. Examine the people that you come in contact with, and what is it about them that you really don't like? I'm not a fan of Tom Brady. I'm a Buffalo Bills fan, have been for years, and he's been a thorn in our flesh for as long as he's been in the league. But if I'm honest, the reason that I'm not a fan of his isn't because of anything that he's done. It's because he has like 47 NFL championships, and we don't have one. That's what it is. I'm angry about the fact that he's there. It has nothing to do with him. It has everything to do with me. So examine those relationships in your life, those friendships, those people who come in contact with you. Why don't I like that person? Could be because secretly I'm jealous of what they have that I don't. And if I want to get rid of jealousy, and I don't want that to destroy my heart and destroy every relationship that I come in contact with, then I'm going to have to do the hard, ugly, difficult, no fun work of exposing what's inside me so that I can be free of jealousy. Now, anger says, you owe me. Greed says, I owe me. Jealousy says, God owes me. 3 lies. 3 debt-to-debtor relationships that have taken place. 3 enemies of our heart that need to be destroyed. The ball's in our court. We have the information. Now, what are we going to do with it? Are we going to continue to walk around with a clogged up artery? With damaged arteries that could give out at any minute and could spill out into every relationship that we have? Or are we willing to do the uncomfortable work of searching our hearts, cleaning them out, reinforcing them, and letting God bring healing that only He can bring? That's the question that you have to answer today. Let me pray for us. Father, a jealous heart is something that we don't want to acknowledge that maybe we have. We all want to give ourselves the benefit of the doubt. We all want to put on a good front, a good face, and say that we maybe are better than what we are. But the reality is this: if we have those negative feelings, those negative emotions, those thoughts towards people who have better than us or have things that we don't, it's a really good sign that jealousy could be creeping around, lurking below the surface. So, Father, would you help us to do the difficult work of exposing what's there? God, open our eyes, open our hearts to see what's really going on and give us the desire, God, to destroy those things through the power of your Spirit so that we can be the healthiest followers of Jesus that we can possibly be. And Lord, when jealousy tries to rear its ugly head, would you help us to see the cross? Would you help us to see Jesus and the sacrifice that he made for us? And in light of that, God, you don't owe us a thing, but we owe you